Анна Франк – еврейская девочка, попавшая в концлагерь во время Второй мировой войны. Там она и умерла в возрасте 15 лет от тифа. Из всей ее семьи выжил только отец, который нашел записки Анны Франк и опубликовал их. Дневник Анны Франк стал символом ужасов нацизма, был переведен на множество языков и обрел мировую популярность. Через 9 лет после смерти Анны Франк в Швеции родилась Барбро Карлен, шведская писательница, выпустившая свой первый сборник стихов еще в 12 лет. Женщина утверждала, что в прошлой жизни она была Анной Франк. Насколько ли можно в это верить? Шизиков и шарлатанов на свете очень много. Многие люди пользуются идеей реинкарнации, чтобы стать, к примеру, популярнее.
Одна певица сказала, что она якобы в прошлой жизни была Марлин Монро, и вот она ходила к психологу, и они провели сеанс регрессии в прошлой жизни. Ну, знаете, есть такое, типа, посредством гипноза тебя как-то вводит в какое-то состояние, и ты можешь в этом состоянии что-то вспомнить, да, и из прошлых жизней. Это называется вот регрессивная психология, какая-то херня, короче. Вот якобы она вспомнила все свои романы с Джоном Кеннеди. И такая говорит, что, ой боже, я всегда вот чувствовала, что у меня вот здесь вот есть родинка. Я так удивилась, что в этой жизни у меня ее нет.
Случай с Барброй Карлен все-таки заставляет задуматься. Во-первых, она действительно очень похожа на Анну Франк. Не только внешне, но и в том числе по склонности к писательству и стилю написания. Кроме того, последний оставшийся в живых родственник Анны Франк, ее кузин, который возглавлял фонд Анны Франк, встретился с Барбарой и признал ее. Чуть позже Барбро Карлен выпустит книгу о своем опыте пребывания в двух жизнях одновременно и назовет эту книгу «Изабель волки». Книга вызовет гневные протесты среди еврейского населения, которые не верят в реинкарнацию из-за своей религии. В итоге публикация книги остановится, и на русском языке ее нет и подавно, на английском посчитать вы ее тоже не сможете. Одним словом, все, что осталось от этой истории, это видеозапись, на которой Барбро Карлен презентует свою книгу и коротко рассказывает о своей истории. Эту видеозапись я перевел на русский язык, и все оставшееся видео будет эта видеозапись.
I wanted to introduce now Barбро Kарлен, who is the author of And the Wolves Howled. And Barбро is also the reincarnation of Anne Frank. And she obviously is the author of the diary of Anne Frank. Barбро, can you tell us a little bit about your book, And the Wolves Howled, and your story?
Yes, I will. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me here. I'm very happy to come here, and thank you, Walter, for inviting me. I will start to read just a few lines from my book, just to get us started. And it's called Memories from the Past. The darkness closes tighter and tighter around her. She's weeping and afraid. Her little body is shaking, and she's drenched in sweat. She can hear them running up the stairs. The shouted orders pierce her body like knives. Dogs are barking, and with a crash the door is kicked in. She wakes up. It's almost light outside. The birds are singing, and everything is quiet. Still not quite out of her dream, she dries away the tears from her face. I had these horrible dreams for as long as I can remember. And when I was about 2 years old, I told my mother that my name was not really Barbrå, it was Anne. And of course my mother didn't know what to say, and she didn't really understand it, I guess. So she just thought that I had very lively fantasy. And I kept having my dreams, and I tried to find out how strange it was that I was living in two worlds at the same time. I know my name was Anne Frank, but they insist calling me on Barbrå. And my parents insisted me to call them Mom and Pa, and I knew they were not my real parents. So it was a very difficult situation to grow up like this, because I had no one to talk to. And even though my parents were very, very loving and caring, they didn't want to deal with this. So the years went past, and I kept telling them that my name was Anne and that my father was soon gonna come and get me. My mother got so worried, so she took me to a psychiatrist because she thought I was crazy. And at that time, I was about 6 years old at that time. So I have found out that it was not really a good thing to talk about, because everybody got so tense when I tried to explain to them what I experienced. I didn't tell him anything about it. I was just like a normal 6-year-old happy girl. And he said to my mother that she's as normal as she can be. So don't worry about it. She will grow out of it. Well, I never did. I just became more and more quiet about it. But then when I was 7 and I started school, I learned how to read and how to write. And that was a wonderful, wonderful relief, because now I could write. And I could tell the paper everything that I couldn't tell anyone else. But a lot of pieces of paper were spread around in my room, and it was everything from poetry to little stories, thoughts about the higher power, reincarnation, where we came from, where we were going. In school, I realized that Anne Frank was a famous person. And the first time I heard about that, I was shocked, actually, because all of a sudden my teacher started to talk about Anne Frank, and here I was knowing that I was Anne Frank, and how can she talk about me? How it didn't really work for me. And then eventually, of course, she told about the diary and about everything. So I realized pretty soon that it was not very smart to go around and say that I had been Anne Frank. So I just became very quiet about it. When I was 10 years old, my parents decided to take me and themselves for a trip around Europe. And eventually we came to Amsterdam. We stayed in a hotel, and my parents wanted to see, of course, everything that was worth seeing in Amsterdam, and Anne Frank's house was one of it. And we were at the hotel room, and my father said that let's do the Anne Frank house first. So I called for a cab. And I found myself saying to them, we don't need a cab, we're not far away. And I knew exactly where we were. And he said, how can you say that? You've never been here before. I said, well, I don't know, but let me show you the way. I know it's not far. So they said, okay. So they walked with me, and I took them there, and we walked for maybe 10 minutes, and it was a little bit crisscrossing the streets. And when we came, I said, it's around the next corner, and we will be there. And we were, and of course, both my parents, they were like, what is happening here? But they didn't say much. And then when we came up towards the house, I saw that the steps outside were different, were changed. So I stopped and I said, it's strange, they have changed those steps. And still my parents didn't say anything. And we went in, paid our tickets, and when I came into that house, it was the most horrifying feeling I have ever had. Because all of a sudden I was back to my dreams. I recognized everything I had seen ever since I was a little child. And I took my mother's hand, and when she felt how cold I was and sweaty I was, she said, my God, what's the matter with you? Don't you want to go in here? And I said, yes, I want to go. Just want to hold your hand. We walked up those stairs, and we came up to the room where Anne Frank had lived. And I was absolutely terrified. So when I looked at one of the walls, I saw all these pictures from newspaper magazines that was cut out, and it was from movie stars and song stars and things, and it made me feel almost happy because I said to my mother, look, the pictures are still there, and it was like almost coming home. And she said, what pictures? And she looked on the wall, and I looked on the wall, and there were no pictures there. I said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I said, I saw those pictures on the wall, and I know they have been there. So she said, wait a minute. So she walked over to one of the guys that worked there and said, tell me, has it ever been pictures on this wall? And the guy said, yes, we just took them down a couple of weeks ago because Anne Frank put them up there, but we took them down because people are taking them and they're touching them and they will all be destroyed. But now we're putting them in a frame and glass so no one can destroy them, but they will be up again. And I think that was the moment where my mother realized that it was not fantasy. Something had happened that was bigger than she could understand. She just, hugged me and said, I understand, and you're not alone anymore. I promised them that I will just go outside and I will wait for you outside. So they let me go, and I walked down those stairs, and I was crying, I tell you, I was crying, and I was so scared. It was terrible. I see this man in a green uniform coming up behind me and hitting his arm over me. And I swear to you, he was so real, like you are to me now. And I fell down on the floor, and I was laying there. And when I looked up, I saw all these tourists standing there looking at me. And there was, of course, no man in a green uniform. Like I said, at that time, my mother realized that I actually had been Anne Frank. Father was a little bit different because he was almost annoyed that he had been overproved that I had lived before. He didn't want to be overproved. He just wanted to live in his Christian world where everything was set right. So I kept on writing my books, and that was my way of letting it out. But I didn't have any need whatsoever to tell people that I knew I had been Anne Frank. And I actually never thought I would. But you see, you should never say never. So I will tell later why everything changed. But as I grew up, when I was about 15, my memory slowly started to fade away. And I was so relieved. It was like getting a new life. I was actually very, very happy. And I thought everything was behind me. Boy, was I wrong, I tell you. What should I do, and what can I become? What can become out of me? And my choice may seem very strange, but growing up, and even when I was older, even though I didn't have my memories left, I still had very difficult moments with certain things. And among those things was uniforms. Police in uniforms was always terrifying. So when I was pulled over by a police car, asked to show my driver's license, that was like someone was going to kill me. I mean, it was so terrible. And more than once, I was thinking about trying to get away from them, which I never did, luckily. But I think if I hadn't done anything to that so-called phobia, I would have been in real trouble sooner or later. So, and also I was riding horses, and as everybody knows, that's a very expensive sport to have, very expensive interest. So I put these two things together, and I said to myself, why not become a mounted police officer? I had often wondered, why did I remember my past life? Why do I have these memories, and why don't you have them? Or my mother had them? Or why was I different? And I never figured it out. I thought it was kind of unfair almost, because it made my childhood so difficult. And also when I wrote my books, I grew up not as a normal child.
Так что я считала это несправедливым и спрашивала, почему это происходит. И скоро я получила ответ. В полиции был один человек, который меня особенно пугал. Я была просто в ужасе от него, когда звучал его голос. Это было невыносимо ужасно. И произошло следующее. Все это написано в моей книге. Это очень длинная история. Если я буду рассказывать, вы не уйдете отсюда до ночи. Сейчас скажу только то, что он и еще один человек стали обвинять меня без каких-то ведомых на это причин. По крайней мере, тогда я еще это не выяснила. И становилось все хуже и хуже, и я поняла, что я оказалась в моих ночных детских кошмарах и не видела разницы между кошмарами ночью и днем. Конечно, не было такого, что ко мне приходили и стучали в дом с собаками, но это было настолько сильное давление, это было таким сильным давлением, что я не могла никуда от этого деться. И вдруг на короткое время ко мне вернулись мои воспоминания из детства, мои кошмары из детства. И я не стала видеть разницы между кошмарами и реальностью. И не было никакого выхода из этого. Это все сводило меня с ума. Все это продолжалось около года. Я не знала, что мне делать. Я просто не видела связи между этими всеми событиями. И я была в отчаянии, и у меня не было никаких ответов. Я была очень близка к тому, чтобы лишить себя жизни, потому что я это все не выдерживала. Однажды я прогуливалась ночью, я подошла к океану, села на берегу и спрашивала, почему это все происходит, почему у меня есть воспоминания из прошлой жизни, что я должна делать. И вдруг я почувствовала силу внутри себя. И это был свет, который наполнил всю меня. И он вселил в меня веру в то, что я найду ответы на все свои вопросы. Если я буду сильной, если я не сдамся и просто продолжу оставаться в живых. И когда этой ночью я вернулась домой, мне опять приснился кошмар, но этот кошмар был ответом на мой вопрос. Этой ночью я поняла, что то, что с тобой происходит в этой жизни, влияет на твою следующую жизнь или на еще следующую жизнь. Ничего в нашей жизни не происходит случайно. У всего есть своя цель. И даже если мы не видим причины, по которым что-то происходит, мы должны верить в это, верить в себя, продолжать быть сильными, верить в свой внутренний свет. Мы должны верить в светлые силы, в силы добра и не давать злу владевать нами. В том кошмаре я увидела, что эти два человека, которые сейчас пытались на меня так давить в этой жизни, они были и в моей прошлой жизни. Это относится к последним дням моей жизни, когда я была еще Анна Франк. Это неизвестно, я тоже об этом ничего не знала, но это объяснило, почему это все происходит в этой жизни. Это было незавершенное дело, назовем это так. И когда я это все поняла, это дало мне столько силы. И тогда я встала и сказала, что ж, последний раз вы смогли убить меня, но в этот раз у вас не получится. На этот раз у меня есть выбор. Тогда у меня его не было, но сейчас он есть. И я не позволю вам убить меня. И после всего этого я поняла, что у меня были все эти воспоминания для того, чтобы я смогла все это понять. Потому что если бы не мои воспоминания, я бы не спаслась на этот раз. Я бы не верила, что у меня есть что-то хорошее. Кроме этого, я смогла написать мою книгу и смогла сказать людям о том, что я была Анна Франк. Это не очень важное сообщение. Важно то, что если вы знаете, что вы уже жили раньше, то вы понимаете, что что-то может происходить под влиянием прошлого, или это может быть карма, или люди, которые влияют из прошлого. Вы не должны помнить свои прошлые жизни, но если вы понимаете, что она была, это делает вашу нынешнюю жизнь проще, и мне это спасло жизнь. Понимание связи между событиями и осознанием, что я могу сделать выбор. Я думаю, что мы все имеем эту возможность выбирать. И вот почему я написала эту книгу. Я знаю, что многим людям не понравится моя книга, и им не понравится, что я называюсь Анной Франк, но я не могу назвать себя кем-то другим именем, потому что это будет неправдой, а я хочу написать абсолютно всю правду целиком. И вот почему я все это делаю, и вот почему я сюда пришла, и спасибо, что вы слушаете меня и пришли сюда. Спасибо. Скажите, а вы виделись с каким-нибудь родственником Анны Франк или, может быть, с ее друзьями каким-нибудь?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was introduced to Anne Frank's last living relative, that is her cousin, and that lives in Switzerland. And I was introduced to him about 6 years ago by my publisher in Switzerland. And this Buddy Elias is a name, the cousin of Anne Frank, and he had heard about me having memories as Anne Frank because my publisher knew about it, even though I didn't write about it, but he knew about it. So he had told Buddy Elias this, and Buddy said that he wants to meet me, even though he didn't believe in reincarnation. And I think that he was curious just to see what person would go around and claim that she had been Anne Frank. So my publisher told me when I was there for a book signing, they said that there's a famous actor, which Buddy Elias is actually a famous actor, that wants to meet you because he has read your books. So my publisher didn't tell me who he was. So we were invited there for dinner, and we went there, and I knocked the door, and Buddy opened, and at the same moment we just fell in each other's arms. He was crying and I was crying, and we just sat alone for 2 hours, and we just talked and talked and talked. And Buddy is the president of the Anne Frank's Foundation. As a president of the foundation, he's in a very vulnerable situation, of course. So when he went out to newspapers, when they asked him about me, and he went out there and he said that I really believe that she was Anne Frank. If anyone was Anne Frank, it's Barbrå. It was after my book was published. So when he said that it's your story and it has to be published. So without him, it wouldn't have been. But when he went out and said that he really, supported me and my book and everything, he was almost killed. I mean, they went after him like crazy. And they wrote big articles about him, how the president of the Anne Frank's Foundation could be so crazy and believe in such stupid things. And he's an older man. I mean, he's 75 years old. And he got so affected by this, he almost had a heart attack. And he was really, really in bad condition for a while. But we are very, very close friends. And every time I go to Switzerland, I stay with Buddy and his wife.